Okay. So, welcome everyone. It is 2 p.m. UK time, and since we have some time constraints, we are going to start right away. My name is Fernando Guigu, as you can see on this slide, and we are going to talk about ZenSum. That is an approach to articulate leadership through collaborative boards and help organizations to move from agile teams into an agile organization. One thing that many of you may ask is still another framework? Why there are Kanban, Scrum, design thinking, DevOps, so many things. Why do we still need something else? And well, one reason is that these different approaches, they are very good for different purposes, but quite often they don't seem to be aware of the rest. So when you talk about Scrum, you don't often talk about design thinking or Lean or OKRs. And very often in organizations, people ask, hey, which one should I use? They even think that they can be contradictory, and they are not contradictory at all. They are based on the same principles, they serve the same purposes, and they are fully compatible, with the only concept that each of them fulfills sometimes a different purpose and can be useful in different moments. This is the first reason. There is a second one we will also present today, but for the first reason, there is a video you can have a look. It's called Agile Tetris, is the one pointed here, and is where I present exactly all these different approaches in this way, making a reference to the old video game Tetris. And I talk about all these frameworks you can see here in this image, highlighting also other general aspects or principles, like the importance of a clear architecture and the importance of visualization, that are all concepts that are common across many of them. So there is when I talk and you can see about when is the right moment to use one or another. Okay, I will not go in this presentation into these details because we only have 30 minutes. So I will move forward to the second reason about why ZenSum is being developed. And this is because when we think about an organization, normally the shape that comes into our minds is still very often this pyramid, okay? Thinking about a hierarchy and how the structure is organized. But when we think about agile teams, the figure that comes to our minds is a little bit different, okay? We tend to be equals, we tend to be peers, we are more collaborative, we tend to help each other, and so on. So the question that many organizations are asking is how to move from this structure or hierarchies to a more flat approach that empowers people and promotes collaboration. And well, the many traditional organizations with a long history behind are unfortunately stuck a little bit into this situation. So the whole organization remains more or less the same, but they have some agile teams inside working or trying to work in an agile way. This generates, unfortunately, a lot of friction because they need to deal with all the policies and regulations that the organization has across and beyond each particular team. There are, of course, other cases. We were yesterday viewing the presentation, the brilliant keynote from Mary and Tom. I'm always happy to listen to them. And they were talking more about these kind of organizations that are really empowering the teams, allowing them to have direct contact with the reality without proxies, delivering a solution, measuring the results, and moving forward, trying to move these indicators in the right direction. But these are really the cutting-edge organizations that are making this possible for a few teams. This is not yet the common and the normal situation we are in. When we see this situation here I'm still in here a slide that Mary was presenting yesterday when she was talking about the themes for 2010 until 2020. And the third one, the responsible team, is exactly what we were viewing there. But every time I listen to them, I feel that actually I am older because they are always talking with a fresh point of view about the future and the things to come. And talking or working sometimes with more traditional organizations, they are still in this phase. They are still in a situation that they have some agile teams, but the whole organization is still as always. So what is the problem with this big part that is still maybe kind of in the old times, or well, now I notice it's a black color. I didn't make it on purpose, but we can still say somehow that is still in the darkness. There are departments like, for example, human resources, that it shouldn't be called like this as of today, but they are still calling it in this way. People is being seen as resources. This is from the very old times, okay? And this department decide maybe who are the people that are showing in the organization, sometimes the career path, how people move from one team to another. So it's a lot of things that are imposed to these agile teams in traditional organizations that generate a lot of friction. Another aspect, for example, is the overall strategy that is defined in this way, the same like the budget constraints, how procurement takes place. The bigger the organization, the more regulations you have, and the more constrained teams are to decide, for example, with which supplier to talk, which supplier to hire for a specific project. And even if you know that a certain supplier is the right one you want for this project or program, sometimes you have only a few set of preferred suppliers and you have to choose among them. Then you have a lot of subcontracting going on that just increases the prices and vanishes responsibilities. But again, these are all the kind of things that we have still carrying on from traditional organizations and are being imposed to these agile teams. There are still more things like sales, operations, etc., audit, and so on. All these things, in addition to be part of the organization, and have a very way of being imposed in a very top-down approach. So this is not something that the agile teams can really participate, discuss, and co-create together with the organization. This is just the way things are here, and this is what you need to accept as a fact. Unfortunately, not only this is top-down, but sometimes it's not even just in this way. Sometimes it goes a little bit more this other way. So the different policies of the different departments are not always consistent, and sometimes you have some conflicts between them. It can happen, for example, that sales is asking you to deliver a solution in a given date, but you cannot hire the supplier you would like to work with in order to fulfill this demand, or you don't have the budget, or HR it doesn't allow you another team that has enough capacity to collaborate with yours. So all these kind of things are conflicting targets. And this is in traditional organizations that are still trying to make the move. You may say, well, actually, there are still newer organizations, and these more modern organizations are the ones that will prevail in the long run, and the other ones, the market will take care of them. Yes, this can be true, but this also means a lot of suffering that maybe is not necessary. And on the other side, sometimes also modern organizations may find themselves that even though they are doing a lot of very nice things, they may still be carrying on some concepts from the old mindset. This is an article in the Wall Street Journal about Netflix and the keeper test that they were doing. When I first read it, I couldn't really believe it, and I was trying to find more information in order to confirm that this was real. And surprise, surprise, in jobs.netflix.com/culture, you can see this page, and if you scroll a little bit, you will come to this section of the text where they say that basically they do the keeper test for the managers, asking them if somebody wants to leave your team or leave the company, will you try to do anything possible in order to keep this person with us? And if the answer is negative, like no, I don't know if I'm going to do everything at my hand to keep the person with us, then the manager is going to be replaced. Point. Simple as that, and hard as it sounds. To me, even though I can understand a little bit the intention behind, I think that this is still part of the old mindset, where we assume that the whole machinery and the whole organization is right, is correct, we live in a perfect world, and if something is not working well, there are a couple of gears that we need to replace. Actually, a more modern mindset should be like, if a person wants to leave the organization, and even if a second person is not making anything to prevent that, to keep this person with us, then we need to find out what the reasons are for that. And this is probably a possibility to make a major improvement to make the life of the people that is working with us even better. But assuming that we are perfect, and if somebody wants to leave is their fault, I don't think is the right approach. Not only this is going on at Netflix, I was reading also before writing ZenSum and moving in this direction, this book, How Google Works. When I saw the title, I said, well, finally, there is a comprehensive approach about how to organize large organizations covering all these different aspects that we were viewing before. But unfortunately, the book is a collection of nice stories. It's a very good book, it's very nice reading, it's really worth to have a look at it. But what you will find is not a consistent and comprehensive approach. What you will find is a list of stories that Eric Schmidt and Jonathan Rosenberg found when they were coming from the traditional MBA approach, and they made a huge plan for the next 2 or 5 years. And then Larry and Sergey look at them and say, have you ever seen somebody delivering more than what was specified in a plan? No, not really. So why do you want to make a plan? What you are doing when you do a plan is setting an upper limit of what the people can deliver. And we don't want that. What we want is to give a direction, present some challenges, and see how much is the maximum that people can contribute with creativity. So they ask, what should we do then? And they say, just go and talk with the engineers. And they went there, and this is from the back cover, what you're reading here, with this highlight, that Eric was really surprised. He said, oh, these Google engineers are not the traditional engineers. They are also very business savvy. They have some sound knowledge about the business. And he was kind of surprised. Well, I am more than 50 years old. And I've been working always in IT. And I always remained on the technical path because I was kind of skeptic of traditional management approaches. And every time I was talking with people in IT, they did know the business. Furthermore, I don't think that software is about writing code. I think that software is about formalizing knowledge. That means that those people implementing IT systems for the business or for the end customers tend to understand very well what is the formal knowledge, what are the rules, what is all the expected behavior that we are implementing in an IT system. So they do have this knowledge. However, very often, nobody is talking with them about what they think. And the first time that Eric Schmidt went to talk with them, he was surprised. They actually know a lot. And he also commented that Sergey and Larry were giving them unusual freedom and power. So this also tells us that traditional management doesn't give freedom and doesn't give power. They made a big plan, they assign you the tasks, and this is what you have to do, only this and nothing but this. So creativity is hard to flourish in this kind of context. So we need to go beyond that. And when we look at the kind of frameworks that we have in order to what is so-called scaling Agile or similar things, we find basically two kinds of approaches. The first option is what I call a strong focus on Scrum. Okay, Scrum is nice, is good, has made huge contributions, but it's not the only approach. Again, this video, Agile Tetris, talks a lot about this. But if you see LESS, Nexus, Scrum Scale, for example, all these approaches are basically all about how to increase the collaboration across the multiple teams that are trying to build a product. What about when the product that I want to build is not something that I can cover with one single team, and I want to have multiple teams working on the same product? Well, in this case, these approaches help you a lot, but you are still not addressing all the other topics we were mentioning before. Okay? So the other kind of approaches that you have are these two ones that I'm depicting here, that on the right side, you have a mix. So you keep the traditional hierarchy, and underneath you implement the agile teams. This is exactly this black triangle with the orange dots we were presenting before. And there is a lot of friction in that. This is what Chef Sutherland calls normally the fragile approach, because these are two different mindsets, two different cultures, and there is always friction in the borders. Another approach that, at least here in Switzerland, also in Germany and some other places, is very popular is SAFe. However, the Scale Agile framework, Well, here you can see a link from Ken Schwaber, one of the authors of Scrum, about what he thinks about SAFe. And in my opinion, is something a little bit too complicated for something. Instead of going in the lightweight direction and focusing more on people, is focusing a lot on processes, roles, and all these kind of things. You see here a lot of different roles and different people. And for example, in Lean, you try to give flexibility to the people and get out of roles, more in the direction of responsibility, but not constraining people to do one thing and only one thing. You tried really to promote collaboration. So in addition, these approaches tend to be a little bit more top-down. There is a lot that can be improved. There is a lot we can do better. And if we go down to the roots of all these issues, we come down to this book from Taylor that he wrote in 1911 about the principles of scientific management. When you look inside this book, you get things that are a little bit surprising, like this statement here that a person doing the work is incapable of fully understanding the science of the work that the person is doing without the guidance of help of those who are working with him or over him, either through lack of education or because of the insufficient mental capacity. This is the view of the workers in 1911. That could make sense because those people working in the assembly line of Henry Ford were maybe not fully aware about how to build an automobile, how to build a car. They only knew how to tighten a little bit the screws. But this was the work at that time. As of today, this doesn't apply any longer. So I'm trying to challenge all these concepts, and I started writing this other book, so the principles of scientific leadership instead of management. I'm kind of halfway. I'm more than happy for those of you who would like to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you want to be a reviewer of what is in progress, I am a little bit more than half of the book done. And inside this book, I discuss about the definition of leadership, the new context we are in, and then about the principles and the practical implementation. Talking about the principles is kind of challenging because if you talk the principles, people often ask, okay, but how do I implement this in practice? And if you give people only the practice, they may forget the principles behind. And this is when you come into kind of dogmatic implementations. I once heard a person telling a story of a team. It was in London, if I remember well. And in the beginnings, the DSM, that today is called, fortunately, Daily Scrum Meeting, in the beginning it used to be called Daily Stand-Up Meeting. And a person was not allowed to attend this stand-up meeting because he was sitting in a wheelchair, which doesn't make any sense. But this is when we just take a recipe and try to apply it blindly without thinking what are the principles behind. So I'm going to give you a quick look about some of the principles in ZenSum and what is the kind of implementation, where the core of the implementation are the so-called collaborative boards. So time boxed is something that we find in Scrum, in design thinking, in many approaches. And it is essential because it has many benefits, like making a major goal more clear, more concrete, and giving a specific objective to be achieved, let's say, in a couple of weeks or during a sprint, whatever. It's also a very good way to manage risk. And this is very important because the bigger the risk, the smaller the scope should be, the shorter the time box should be. Because the more we expand it, the more work in progress we have. That we don't want to have it because work in progress is waste. We want to have a clear end. We want to deliver something meaningful, usable, so we can get feedback that allows us then to understand, according to the Lean Startup, if the idea that we put into a product makes sense or not, and if we can continue or we have to pivot and move to plan B. So remember, please, that every time you have a risk, if failure is an option, you need to fail soft. I call it like this as an acronym for small. So the bigger the risk, the smaller your scope should be. Then you can fail often, you can recognize it fast, and you can try again soon. Okay? This is also aligned with another principle that is called Toyota Kata, that starts basically with a vision that is presented to the teams and is the vision that gives direction to all the efforts we are trying to make. And then the teams can try to deliver step by step everything that goes in this direction. If something is a risk, we can still fail, but hopefully this step was short enough that the learnings we are making outweigh the losses. And then we just pivot and move forward still in the right direction. So Toyota Kata, each of these steps you can see also that is taking place in a time box, and you can see them as sprints in a Scrum or whatever. But what Toyota Kata brings into is giving the direction to all these intervals. So we make sure that they are all aligned towards the vision and not just going into different directions. Another important principle is the one from Flow, that is from this book, from Mihail Csikszentmihalyi. I hope to pronounce it properly. And basically he says that if a team is exposed, or a team or a person, with a challenge that is very high when the person has low skills, this is going to be a stressful situation. If on the other side the skills are high but the challenge is low, this is going to be very boring. The sweet spot is when there is a good balance between the skills and the challenges. And of course, the more we do something, our skills are also getting better, so we progress during the practice with our skills and also the challenges we are making. This is what he calls the flow channel. And we need to keep this in mind, because once a managing director was asking me about this articulation of the vision into smaller challenges for the teams to implement, and how to decide if the challenge is the right measurement. And here is the point: you just present the challenges and you see if the teams come up with a proposal. The better and the good the proposals are, and the more proposals you get, that means that you are here in this flow channel. If you don't get proposals, you are even in the boredom kingdom or in the stressful one. You need to talk with the people and find out what is going on. So this is an important idea, because the next point we are going to see also is about focus, and the next one is collaboration. But with focus, we are going to see that we have these meetings that we call from the collaborative board, where basically you have 3 different types of meetings, and each of them has to be very focused. The first one is a kind of a kickoff meeting where you approve. You can compare it with the planning in Scrum. The last one is a go live, that is in green here, where there is an acceptance of what has been delivered. You can again compare it with a review meeting in Scrum. And the intermediate ones, they don't take place every day. They take place, if you are using Scrum, for example, after 1 sprint or after 2 sprints. If you are using any other approach, it just happens on a regular basis according to what was defined also in the initial proposal that was approved for the kickoff. And the intermediate meetings are maybe the major difference, because kickoff and acceptance, we are familiar with that. But with intermediate meetings, we normally tend to think about a status report. And these meetings are not a status report. Because in a status report, we tend to present things a little bit better, sometimes much better, than they really are. And the idea with these intermediate meetings is that they are a support meeting where leader can apply the servant leadership concept and support the teams in order to succeed. Because leadership and teams can succeed or fail together. Okay? And then this is the opportunity for the teams to ask for help in the first place, and if they don't need any help because everything is going well, to ask for feedback and present what they have at the moment. But it's up to the teams to lead these meetings, to present the things, and to decide if they want to show things or if they are not yet ready. Eventually, a team can come to the meeting and say, we have no problem, we don't have anything yet to present, thank you so much, the meeting is over. Of course, you can say, well, but what happens if a team comes meeting after meeting saying that everything goes fine, and at the end of the session, when the time box has expired, they don't present the results? Well, this is a bad thing. And this means that the next cycle that the team tries to go for another goal, the scope is going to be reduced. The time cannot be so long. And they need to manage, again, like we were saying before, risk by managing scope. So these board meetings are going to be based in collaboration. The board meetings are going to be held by team members and leadership members, and the 2 leadership members we are putting here in blue are the ones that are also taking part of other board meetings of other teams. And this is how they try to make sure that everything is being aligned across multiple teams. The focus is also enforced by a practice that is called nemawashi. I'm not going deeper into that point here. Happy to share some links. But nemawashi basically separates the meetings as we know them today into discussions and the meeting itself. Too often we have terrible meetings because we use them for a lot of discussions. In Japan, very often these discussions take place out of the meeting. So we don't have this situation like we feel like we are in a tennis game and everybody's just watching two people exchanging arguments. If these two people have arguments to discuss, they can do it out of the meeting. They can have it ad hoc in a coffee machine or wherever they want, only involving those that are really relevant for the discussion. And when the meeting takes place, it's only the formal acknowledgement of everything that has been discussed before. So these meetings don't take more than 30 minutes. There are no surprises in these meetings, and it's just the official acknowledgement of all the discussion that took place before and saying clearly what is going to be delivered by when and what is the plan, the meeting's plans in the near future. Okay? This concept of nemawashi is really very important to make all this work. Finally, we can see that if we merge together Toyota Kata with this North Star about the challenge, the board meetings that start with an approval and end up with an acceptance, we go through different milestones. Within these boundaries is where we have collaboration and the aligned autonomy. Autonomy is not letting the teams do whatever they want. Autonomy is something that happens between these clear boundaries, where they can go through multiple sprints, multiple iterations, depending on the success track history that the team has. The more success they have delivered, the bigger the scope they can go for the next round. And then they go for another one, trying always to get closer and closer to the challenge. The importance is that the challenges are coming always top-down because it's a leadership view. It can be discussed with everyone, but it's mainly a leadership responsibility. And the proposals are coming bottom-up. And you see here, remember again, the flow channel we were talking about. These two had to meet in the middle and collaborate with each other and make sure that the teams and leadership succeed together. Additionally, as another principle, we have a systemic view. It means we don't think that people are gears that need to be replaced. The minimal unit in a new organization are the teams, and we can let the teams to be built on its own. We can let people work with those they feel comfortable working with to deal with the challenges that are being presented to them. This has to do with what McKinsey says, that management needs to think more like investors and have this venture capital style budgeting, meaning you can plant multiple seeds and allow 3 teams to go for a first round, but maybe only one comes and flourishes and comes really with a good proposal. From there, you try to take care of that team, because a team is much more than the sum of the individuals, and you let it grow in this way. I'm just going through very short number of principles. The book I was mentioning before is still a work in progress. This is the number of principles I have listed until now. They are about 45. And as you can see in the page numbers, many of them are not yet written. That's why many of them have still the same number. But this is exactly the point that I'm trying to write. And again, contact me and let me know if you want to be a reviewer. The whole idea is basically that these organizations try to step a little bit back, giving more space to the agile teams to really grow and get closer to what Mary was mentioning yesterday, that they can have direct access to the reality, deliver, measure the results, and grow from there. This is basically very short, in 30 minutes, ZenSum, and this book that I'm working at this now. We are 1 minute from 30, and I promise our hosts to finish more or less at this time. I hope I did it right. Thank you all.